Good morning, Alisa.
Good morning, Alex. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Okay. Good. Very good. Very honored to can do the webinar with you guys today.
The honor is ours. So let's begin. Good morning, everyone. I'm Olesia Drozdova, Chair of Global Business Alliance at Orange County Realtors. Thank you for joining us today to hear from two great economists. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank West and Gabriel Valley Realtors for helping put together this event for all of you. We also want to thank the other co-hosting associations and their members for joining us. Arcadia Association of Realtors, Greater Los Angeles Realtors, Malibu Association of Realtors, Tri-Counties Association of Realtors, and Pacific Southwest Association of Realtors. I would also like to thank Orange County Realtors and Loan Direct for sponsoring 8 $50 Amazon gift cards that will be raffled off randomly throughout this webinar. Please watch the chat box to see if you are one of the lucky winners. And congratulations to our first two winners listed in the chat. We will email your gift cards to you within the next few days. Now on to the main event. Dr. Lawrence Yun is Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research for National Association of Realtors. Dr. Yun is going to present and discuss NAR's 2020 profile of international transactions in U.S. residential real estate. If you have questions for Dr. Yun, please submit them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Dr. Yun, take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alicia, for the introduction. I am here in near Washington, D.C., so East Coast time. So very good morning to you out in Southern California. I'm glad that several associations could gather together for what's happening on the real estate market along with the global dimension, because we are certainly in this unique times. No one anticipated the pandemic, first coming from China, then to Europe, to land in the US, where now we are all wearing masks. As we are walking along the street, that has become new normal, but we know that the vaccine will be discovered. It looks like the air travel, somehow they have the air circulation inside the plane completely refreshed every 2 minutes. So somehow the likelihood of catching a COVID is very, very minimal flying, and maybe this will resuscitate some of the international travel, which will be very important for the global buying demand. But right now we are still in this health situation where we have to go through, but as related to the real estate, quite surprising. Even with the restriction on the international travel, the buying activity remains very solid, but it's principally domestic. But as we know, there are many immigrants living in the country that have strong ties with their home country, whether it is from Britain, Germany, or China, Hong Kong. India has become very prominent because of the technological boom out in the Bay Area. And then you have all the emerging economies, whether from the Russia, the South America. So a lot of dynamism potential related to the global buying demand. Let me put on the screen some PowerPoint slides that I want to illuminate as I go into the discussion. So bear with me as I upload the PowerPoint. Okay, so here we go. So this is the home buying demand by foreigners and recent immigrants. So we put recent immigrants as people who have been in the US for less than 2 years. So fairly recent. We know that most immigrants are unable to buy a home within the 2 years of arrival. It takes time to save up for down payment. trying to find the right home, right neighborhood, it takes time. But the fact that there's still a number of people who buy home within the 2 years is implying that there are some immigrant class who come into the country with sizable cash savings, and they want to buy property immediately. So the dark blue line that you see is the pure international buyers. So those are non-immigrants, say a Chinese national living in China, but wants to have a rental property in, say, California, or maybe they're buying property while their children are attending US universities. So the pure blue line, the dark blue line is the international buying activity, while the light blue is representing the recent immigrants. And what you are saying is that we really peaked in activity in 2017, and then it has steadily come down. Now you can say that 2020 activity, which is actually not the full year of 2020, it's not the calendar year, but is the up to March and the prior 12 months. So 12 months up to March, and it is low. And this is pre-pandemic, predominantly pre-pandemic activity. So when we do a next round of data collection for 2021 up to March, we will see even greater decline, or at least that's my anticipation, given the global pandemic period that we are experiencing. So even the 2020 number, as you see on the chart, is much lower than the peak in 2017, we're in essence returning to what happened in 2021 in the recession that we came out of it. So the activities has been cut, but the part of the decline, at least from the foreigners, when we take survey, for those who are interested in buying in the US, what was the key reason as to why you did not buy? And the answer they will give is they could not find the right home. So in other words, the lack of inventory. The lack of inventory has greatly constrained people's choices. So if somehow we are able to produce more homes, more inventory availability, more choices, maybe we get some revival in terms of the buying demand. But another factor that has greatly hindered the international buying activity is simply the fact that number of visa issuance has greatly fallen in recent years. This combines both tourism, which is the predominant, and also for people needing for business activity. And of course, for realtors, you will always work with someone who are interested in investment visa. I don't know the threshold, was at $5 million, you do the real estate investment, and then there would be a path towards living in the US. So that has been, but the number of visa issuance that you can see has fallen, which has driven down the overall global buying demand here in the US. Another factor that has held back, I believe, is that the dollar strengthened. So anytime dollars strengthen, it makes the US property much more expensive for foreigners. That circle item that you see, that does not include the data points that I showed you prior. So this is the recent decline of the dollar, which perhaps during the pandemic, some of the foreigners see an opportunity in the US as their currency is stronger in relation to the dollar. So maybe they view the US property as more manageable now that the dollar is weakening in the latter portion of 2020. Now, the reason why dollar is weakening is the massive liquidity policy pursued here in the US. To put it in a simple word, printing of the money, a lot of printing of the money in the US. America is very fortunate. So America, through the long history of credibility, we can print dollars yet not have inflation right away. For example, you have $20 bill, you take that $20 bill to Mexico, or you take it down to Italy or to South Korea and say, here's $20 bill, give me a haircut. And they will happily give you a haircut. That's how accepting the US dollar currency is globally. And hence America can print money and not have inflation right away. But we know that in other countries, whether Venezuela, when they print money, they will have high inflation. Certainly was the case in Russia following the breakup of the Soviet Union. They printed a lot of money and people's savings just disappear within a few months as the currency became essentially worthless. But in the US, we can print money and not worry about the acceptance, because there's a global acceptance. However, the recent weakening in the dollar is still hinting that, at least for some global financial investors, that too much printing of the money could lead to the weakness of the dollar. But the impact to the real estate is it could be positive impact as foreigners perceive US property to be manageable or a little cheaper than what they initially thought, enhanced by. Also across the US, where the foreign demand is the strongest, is really occurring in a few states: Florida, Texas, and California. First, these are the three, one of the larger states, but the California specifically is drawing large amount of investment from Asian countries, China, Korea, India. So a lot of dollars coming from the Asian country. Naturally, the Pacific Ocean, coming to the West Coast is a more convenient, less travel demand requirement, but also a lot of familiarity. There are many family members, say from Vietnam, living in California. So their first area of destination is in California. So California has that linkage with their many of the originating countries, and hence I think that is the source of demand. I remember visiting San Gabriel Association of Realtors. So when I spoke to the realtors there, when I saw the members, realtor members in the audience, so I was quite surprised. I mean, because I'm from Washington, D.C. area and not familiar with the San Gabriel, that I believe it was like 80% of the realtors members in the audience were Asians, which attests how important the foreign demand is for local real estate market condition. Now, as you try to explain to foreigners about buying in the US, first, you need to provide assurance that US real estate is on solid ground. No one wants to buy a depreciating asset. So if someone wanted to buy a property back in 2006, 2007, just as the foreclosure crisis were beginning, it would have been a very bad decision for foreigners to buy in the US. You buy and you had a price decline of 20, 30%. So people do not want that. So you have to provide assurances to foreigners, whether it's a recent immigrants or true foreigners living in Canada or in China, that the US is on solid ground. So let's look at some of these situations. So let me first turn towards a non-real estate, non-economic data. And it is two states that is not California, Utah and New York. Looking at the GPS mobility. Everyone has a cell phone. You stay at home, it shows no movement. But if you are going out and about town, it shows mobility. So Utah is showing more mobility compared to New York. And why is that? And it's essentially due to the governor's policy. Utah governor essentially believed they want to reopen the economy sooner and in a more relaxed way, while in New York, Governor Cuomo said, I want to contain the virus, and the way you do that is through longer lockdown and more stricter lockdown. I hear many small business owners who happen to be many immigrants in New York City saying they are on the final stage before closing permanently, because many small business owners are saying with no one walking around in Manhattan, their business may be completely shut down. So in terms of the virus, Utah, there are a lot of coronavirus still flying around in Utah, but New York appears to be more contained, but it's coming at a great cost. And this is the unemployment rate for two states. Utah, purple, showing unemployment rate declining, while New York unemployment rate is at 16%. These are close to Great Depression level unemployment rate. Both states have very low unemployment rate. Now let's look at California and see what's happening. So this is unemployment rate for all 50 states. In California, you see at 11.4%. That is one of the higher unemployment rate across the country. All 50 states had an extremely low unemployment rate in February of this year before the lockdown. But now you see the variance beginning to widen up. Utah, very low unemployment rate. New York, high unemployment rate along with California. Arizona, where many Californians are living to go to Arizona, very low unemployment rate. But Hawaii, because it's relying on tourism, remaining at high unemployment rate situation. So the job situation overall in the US is that we have had this 10 straight years of job creation. So from middle of the chart all the way up to prior to the pandemic, 10 years of job creation. Then in a single month, in the month of April, we lost all that job. 10 years of job creation gone in a single month. But you see that in recent months, jobs are being created as the economy is reopening. And if we look at Orange County specifically, looking very similar to the US in terms of the sort of the curvature of the line. So from the middle of the graph, the low point, that was 10 straight years of job creation, and then you lost a job. I put that red line as a reference point. So here's the US, the reference point. So in a sense, Orange County had a little faster job creation compared to the rest of the country before the pandemic. Then you had a shutdown, but the job recovery, the last 3 dotted points is showing a little sluggish job recovery in the Orange County compared to the rest of the country. In fact, for the rest of the country, jobs were down only around 7%, while Orange County was down 10%. Related to the income situation, amazingly, people actually have more income right now than before the pandemic. And you say, how is that possible when there is a business shutdown, people without jobs? And the reasoning is stimulus package, $1,200 check that was given, the enhanced unemployment insurance benefits, and also many small business loans, which owners do not have to repay if they meet certain criteria. So the stimulus package has provided the income support. So what are people doing with this extra stimulus income? They are not spending. So actual consumer spending is below 1 year ago, which means that once the vaccine is discovered, it could be a potential spending unleashing into the economy. So there's a possibility of that. There's large savings currently. People have received the stimulus check, but they have not spent that money. As related to where they're spending money, online shopping, we all know that is rising. Perhaps you did not know that it rose 25% from 1 year before. People spending more at liquor stores. Now, part of that reason is the bars are closed. So, they're drinking more at home rather than at the bars. People are bored at home, so they're buying more hobby material, maybe some bicycles, and also spending more for home improvement, including gardening. Less spending at gas station and less spending for new clothes as they are not meeting so many people in person. Now let's turn to the very good news, the information that you need to share with recent immigrants and with the potential foreign buyers to say US real estate is on solid grounds. Home sales breaking out higher in the summer compared to summer of last year. About 10% higher home sales this year versus last year. This is a nationwide figure. Better news is that new home sales, whatever builders build, they can find buyers. So it is up tremendously compared to 1 year before. And the pending contracts are also up, implying that autumn sales activity will be very strong. And winter months will also be strong because the data on potential buyers. How do I know about potential buyers? Who are applying for mortgages to buy a home? The very first phase of home buying process, and it is up 20-30%. This is a national figure, so it's not specific to California, but nearly all 50 states is encountering similar trends. So autumn activity would be one of the best, and also this winter activity could be one of the best based on this early indicators. But the inventory level is low, and as I mentioned, foreigners want to see more choices, but right now we don't have that much choices. Only way to get more choices is to get more home building. So housing starts would represent home building activity. The orange line is the historical average. So America has been producing below historical average for multiple years, 10 straight years. And the cumulative effect of underproduction is we just simply don't have enough homes for sale. And I believe California, it is even worse because of the tight environmental regulation, tight zoning regulation that hinders home builders from building. And also because of the recent wildfires, the lumber prices have really skyrocketed, about triple the level of what it was 1 year ago. So we need home building back. So maybe some, rezoning conditions, or maybe hiring more skilled construction workers. Maybe the lumber prices will level off, but we need more home building to bring more inventory choices. One other trend that we are seeing because of the pandemic is more people desiring home out in the suburbs. So I know that Orange County is essentially a large suburbs, and maybe you are the beneficiaries. Why try to find a home close to LA downtown if more people can work from home? And I think this work from home flexibility will be with us even after the vaccine discovery. And if that's the case, many people may decide to look for affordability. I know out in the Orange counties, right along the coast, one of the most expensive areas, but more inland, it becomes more affordable because people are seeking out homes out in the suburbs where things are a little more affordable and larger size homes. So forecast is that home prices will be rising. Many realtors said I am too conservative. They think prices will rise more closer to 7% or 8%. But I know that home prices will be rising because of housing shortage and home sales. Even though we missed the spring buying season, I think we can make up for it because of the strong second half of the year. Oscar, I think, may have better perspective about the California market, but nationwide, I think home sales this year, incredibly in 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, that home sales could be a little higher in 2020. But 2021, everything turns even better because I think that work from home will boost housing demand further out into the suburbs. So thank you for listening. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia or Alex. And thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts, my thoughts with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yun, for such an informative presentation. And we do have a few questions. Let me bring them up. So the first question is, Dr. Yun, do you see the election and COVID affecting the real estate market? And you touched on the COVID. What about the election?
My mom always said, talk about politics and religion in front of everyone. So let me do that. Now I'm just jokingly. What I find in the real estate market is that during every presidential election year, this question is always raised by reporters. And when I look at the data, what I find is that consumers are reacting to their pocketbooks. Do they have the income? Is their job secure? And is the mortgage rate favorable? If that is the case, it doesn't matter who occupies the White House, they buy home. If the mortgage rates are high, the jobs are not around, then they don't buy home. So it's really a pocketbook issue. Only at the very upper end market, there's some delay. So they want to assess what's going to happen after the election, what will be the new tax changes before they decide what to buy. So on the upper end, there's a little hesitancy, but for the middle market and below, it really does not have impact other than the normal economic factors.
Thank you. Another question, do you see any emerging buyers coming into the United States? And by buyers, we talk about the countries.
You saw the early chart that we have seen some recent declines in foreign buying. I hope that this is temporary. In 2021, maybe we see some revival of foreign buyers coming into the country. The little softer dollar clearly helps. But we need more inventory choices. I think that would be critical. Perhaps, President Trump has done a few right things related to real estate and a lot of wrong things related to real estate. I know, people can debate on certain individual prospect, but I think, President Trump has also been quite harsh in some of his rhetoric about the foreigners coming into the country, specifically related to China. So that may have hindered some of the Asian buyers into the U.S. So I don't know, but we anticipate, continue sort of reversal and increase in foreign buying in the upcoming years.
Thank you. Another question is about commercial real estate. How do you see the commercial real estate side for 2021?
Thank you for that question, because commercial real estate is on the opposite of residential. Residential market is coming around nicely. Commercial real estate is not. It is facing tough challenges. I know many immigrant population, they start out on small business retail shops, and customers are gone. What do? Maybe they have the lifeline temporarily from the stimulus bill. The office spaces, certainly, many buildings are empty. Fortunately, they're still paying rents, so it's not utilized, but people are working from home, business is going, so they're still paying rent. But the small retail shop is where the concerns are. If there is an opportunity, I would say that the downtown lunch counter is going to be devastated. It's not going to come back. But if you open up a restaurant out in the suburbs, I think there could be some increased demand. Again, people are working from home more frequently, and some people do not want to make their sandwiches at home. They want to just go out and pick it up. So there could be some opportunity for commercial retail shop out in the suburbs. Industrial has done fairly well because of the online shopping, warehousing. But overall, I would say commercial real estate, if you need to sell the property, you may need to do some price reduction in the order of 10% to attract buyers.
Thank you. Do you see why many Asian and European countries prefer buying in the UK versus US?
First, specifically related to London, this is where I think first is close to Europe, and second, Britain has provided the similar condition as in the US to say, you buy a property, this is yours. You don't have to ever worry about confiscation. That's one of the things NAR constantly lobbying Washington to say, independent of who purchases, they have the property rights protection as domestic residents. So that will be big assurance. But I think in London is part due to the proximity to Europe, and second is part, I'm not sure what the right word is, where people, especially from Eastern European countries, including Russia, where they made a lot of money, maybe through corruption, whatnot, and they need to park the money quickly outside of their respective country, and they buy real estate in London as sort of place to park their money.
Thank you. Real estate has been very good in the seasonal rental market. Do you see it continuing to be strong?
We have a housing shortage. So in that sense, investor property should get plenty of demand. I think the interesting question is about some of the temporary measures where you have now eviction moratorium, means that somehow your tenant does not pay rent, where there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to wait until say December 31st to see whether you can begin to start the eviction process. For the most part, tenants are fulfilling their financial obligation to say, look, I signed the contract to pay rent, I'm gonna pay rent. And in the meantime, we are lobbying in Washington to say, if the tenant cannot pay rent, at least the landlord should be getting some rent relief, because many landlords, they're small-time investors, they have one or two investor properties, they have their maintenance costs, they have their mortgage to pay. So we are communicating this message to Washington. So hopefully on the next stimulus measure, it includes some rent relief on landlords where the tenant is not paying the rents.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yoon, for being here with us today. We know how hectic and busy your schedule is, and we really appreciate you being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now I would like to turn it over to Alex Lee to introduce our next speaker. Alex, take it away.
Good morning. I'm Alex Lee, Chair of the Global Business Council at the Western Gabriel. Do you guys see me? Okay. At the Western Gabriel Valley of Realtors. I'm honored to introduce our next guest speaker. But before I do that, I want to bring everyone's attention to the chat window. We have just announced 2 more winners of the $50 Amazon gift cards. Congratulations. Now, I'd like to introduce Oscar Wei, Senior Economist and Director of Research for California Association of Realtors. Oscar is here to present his Southern California Housing Sales Report. Please submit your question for Oscar into the Q&A feature. Now, I will turn it over to Oscar to get started with his presentation.
Great, thank you, Alex, for the introductions, and thank you, everyone, for being here. And of course, thank you, Western Gabriel Valley Realtors, as well as Orange County Realtors, to invite me to this great meeting. And it's my honor to be co-presenting with Lawrence Yun, Dr. Lawrence Yun. I don't think we have ever co-presented before, so it's a great honor. I also have a presentation, and many of you might have attended my presentation. You know that I tend to speak a little long sometimes, so I'll try to speak a little faster this time. And but also just want to let you know that the presentation will be uploaded on the CRL website, and it will be, give me 1 second, it will be posted probably later today or early tomorrow. So please feel free to go on the website and take a look at it. But if you have trouble actually getting to the website, feel free to send me an email. I'll have my email address at the very end. So feel free to send me an email, and I will be gladly to send you the presentation. And I'm glad that, Dr. Lawrence did the presentation first, because he covered a lot of ground that I have some slides on. So I'm going to briefly go over some of those, and I'm going to focus spend more time on the California and Southern California housing market. But as usual, I'll always do a little bit of the economic update. So here are hopefully a few minutes on just the economic updates, and then we'll go right into the housing market. So as Lawrence mentioned, we had a economic downturn in end of first quarter, and also end of first quarter and then the second quarter. We did have a back-to-back decline in economic output in the first and the second quarter. Second quarter dropped pretty significantly by close to 32%. We do expect a third quarter to bounce back, though, and the number probably won't be available for another few more weeks, but it's going to see a bounce back. How big a bounce back it is expected to be double-digit, obviously, but it depends on a lot of variables as well. But we expect an increase in the third quarter. But the first and the second quarter has already done it damage. You've already seen some numbers that Dr. Yun shared. As for unemployment, we have significantly increased to close to 15% at the national level, and then it has been declining. Seems to be improving, in the last few months or so. But the rate of improvement seems to be a little lackluster also in the last couple months. You can see that in March and April, we had a significant shutdown. We have a significant decline because of the lockdown in California. For California, the lockdown was for about 2 months. We reopened in mid-May, but then of course we saw some resurgence in coronavirus pandemic, and then it kind of shut down some of the areas. I shouldn't say shut down, some of the areas kind of closed again. And of course, now we have the social distancing measure continue to be in place for many counties. LA County is one of the counties that actually has, a pretty stringent social distancing measure, and things are getting a little bit better. I'm going to jump right into California. As far as non-farm job growth is concerned, here's a picture of the state for California. It dropped, as I mentioned, pretty significantly in March and April, and it dropped close to roughly for the 2 months, it dropped about 2.6, 2.7 million. And then it starts slowly coming back. You can see, that we had a spike in June, but then it starts slowing down. The recovery starts slowing down as far as the job growth is concerned. So right now, take a look at this snapshot. As for employment, before the crisis, before March, we had 17.6 million. It dropped in April by 2.6, and we recovered by about a third. We still have 2/3, to go back to, and that's why For the unemployment rate, we're still at a very high rate. Dr. Yun mentioned that we're at 11.4% right now, still at double digit right now. And the, if you take a look at some of the weekly numbers, the weekly number reflect, how the pace is going. This is the weekly number released by EDD, the unemployment insurance claim, a jobless claim, as well as the PUA claims that we see on a weekly basis. You can see a spike here, right here, in March and April, and then it started declining. But then look at the pace that we have been going through. Now, forget about this last 2 weeks in August and early September. I think there has been some backlog in California that actually caused a spike in the PUA claims. But take a look at the last 2 weeks right here. It's pretty consistent with the week before. It's pretty consistent with what we saw in July, maybe around August or so, pretty similar. But the latest week, it dropped to the lowest point since mid-June, which is encouraging news. But again, it hasn't been going fast enough. Now, the slide that I show you, that's initial claim. That is, the first time that people file for unemployment claims or PUA claims. The more accurate picture is the continuing claim. This is how many people are still claiming for unemployment insurance and PUA claims. And if you take a look at this number, this last week that we have both PUA claims and unemployment, it is still a very high number. It's pretty consistent with, again, what we saw in early August, late July. So it's a pretty high number. So that's why I think it's going to take a little bit of time for the recovery to get back to where we were at the beginning of the year. And Dr. Yun also showed some mobility report. I used a slightly different mobility report from Google. Google published the mobility report on a either on a weekly basis or daily basis, I can't remember. And the last report that they actually released was somewhere in early September. Since then, I think they tried to look at the numbers again and sort of rejiggle the numbers a little bit. I think they will re-release those numbers probably in a couple of weeks or so. But based on some of the latest number that I saw at the end of August or mid of August, you can see why the labor market continued to struggle, and it is because of a slowdown in economic activity. The Google report actually break it down into different categories, including retail and recreation activities, grocery and pharmacy, workplaces. This shows you, the traffic or economic activities around those places. If you hone into retail and recreation, you can see compared to the beginning of the year, it dropped about 28% for the state as a whole at the end of August. Same for workplaces. We're all working from home instead of going to the office, and that's why we're seeing the traffic or economic activity around workplaces drop quite significantly. Let me hone it and take a look at LA County and Orange County. LA County's retail and recreations also dropped about 29% compared to the beginning of the year, compared to the baseline. For workplaces, also dipped by about 42%. For Orange County, 31% down in the retail and recreation categories, and then down about 43% for workplaces. So what this suggests to us is, yes, we may be showing a little bit more recovery for the county and for the state, but we're still far from being where we were at the beginning of the year. And part of the reason is because of the continued social distancing measures, which is something that we need to do in order to keep the public health at a safety level. And that's why some of the service sectors, like bars and restaurants, continue to operate at not full capacity, but at maybe about 50% capacity. This is a chart that I obtained from Open Tables. Some of you may be familiar with Open Tables. It is a service, online platform where you can reserve your seating at a restaurant. And if you take a look at Greater LA, this is their statistics from Greater LA. Now, at the beginning of the year, the activity at OpenTable continued to increase by 20, 30%. But then right at the shutdown, right when we had a shutdown, right around here, mid-March, all the way through mid-May, their activity dropped 100%, because nobody can go out and dine at a restaurant, right? It started slowly picking up, when we started seeing, the economy reopen, the state reopen. And as of now, we actually still are down for Greater LA, down about 60%, 66%. It's still down 2/3 of the activity for OpenTables because, there are a lot of retail sectors, service sectors that are still down. And based on some of the other studies that we have seen, if it continue on, then some of the retail sectors, some of the restaurants and movie theaters will probably continue to close for next few months or so. And that would cause some shutdowns, some of the closures as well. The report released by UBS suggests that, by 2025, we could lose about 11 to 17% of all the stores, all the retail stores. And if you take a look at, what the impact is on small businesses, all these closures affecting restaurants and bar, it affects a lot of small businesses. And take a look at the small business revenue that is provided by Wall Street Journal via Opportunity Insight. Now, this is shows a national number as well as the LA number and a comparison to Boston. But you take a look at the LA number. This is not the latest number, but at the end of July, it is showing that things are down by small business revenue. We're down by about 20%, 15-20%. As of I think for now it may be back up a little bit, but probably still down. Now that affects a lot of people's financial capability, finance. If you take a look at LA and Long Beach, Anaheim, for those people who were surveyed, 60% said it's going to have a significant financial difficulty on them in the upcoming year. And what's going to happen if they have financial difficulties? Some people close their stores, some people close their restaurants, right? You probably have already seen that. Many of those small businesses closed, and if you take a look at the statistics provided by Yelp, closed about 4,800 small businesses closed because of the shutdown or the lockdown or the social distancing measures. And when business closures go down, it goes back to the questions that or the statistics that we saw earlier. Employment goes down. Many employers close their restaurants, leading to about 30-40% of those businesses leading to layoffs and letting people go, or at least furlough. So what do we expect, for California, for the economy? Take a quick look. We did a quick estimate of what's going to happen in 2020 and what's going to happen in 2021. We believe for 2020, job growth, as far as how many people are going to be employed or increase in number of jobs, it's going to decline compared to last year. There's no doubt about it, by about 13%. But it's going to start picking up in 2021. We still think it's not going to be a significant growth in 2021 for California for job growth, but it will be an improvement. As for unemployment is concerned, we believe the average for the 2020 is going to be close to 11%, and it's going to drop down to 9%. Now, I understand that this could be a little bit more conservative. It could get a little bit better for 2021, but I hope that will be the case. So let's get into the housing market. So many of you have seen our August statistics. We release our monthly statistics usually around the mid of the month, 2 to 3 weeks after the end of the previous month. And here is a quick snapshot. As Dr. Yun said, we do have a pretty robust recovery for the housing market. For California, we saw a in terms of sales, we saw a V-shaped recovery in terms of the existing single-family homes. Take a look at what we have here. we have in August a bounce back of 14 or 15% on a year-over-year basis. That's one of the largest that we have seen for quite some time. I think the last time we have a 14 or 15% increase was back in 2014. But more impressively, this number, the 465,400, that's the highest sales level that we have had for about since 10 years ago. The last time we hit that level was, I think, November 2009. Now, and we did have an increase in July as well. And because of July and August, take a look what happened for the sales for the first 8 months. We're still down compared to last year. For the first 8 months, we're still down about 7%. But compared to what happened 2-3 months ago, the year-to-date number was a double-digit back then. So we have improved, and we will continue to improve for the rest of the year. Probably by, maybe not by as much as what we're seeing, but we're still going to see some increase, and that's partly because of the pending sales that I'll talk about shortly. But also, it's not just sales. Take a look at price as well. Price actually surged past 700,000. That's actually the first time that we surged past 700,000, and that's because of a double-digit increase on a year-over-year basis. And that double-digit increase on a year-over-year basis is because of tight supply, as Dr. Yun mentioned. We're down to 2.1 months of inventory as compared to last year, about 3.4 months. What about LA County and Orange County? Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's take a look at Southern California region as a whole. Following a similar trend, we also increased not as significantly as what we saw at the state level, but still on a year-over-year basis, 5.5%. That leads to a decline of 8.8% for the first 8 months. Now it's still an improvement. I think it was a couple months ago. Again, it was 13-14% on a year-to-date basis. So that's a big improvement. And price-wise, it's following a similar trend. 13% increase for the Southern California region as a whole. It's a very significant increase. And again, it is because of tight inventory. So let's take a look and dissect the sales a little bit for the state first, and then we'll look at some of the county statistics. At the state level, even with a significant increase in sales, we are not seeing sales increase in every single price segment. Take a look at the lower price segments. It's actually still showing a decline, and that part of the decline is because of tight supply. There's no doubt about it. We are seeing more increase, and even more, a very, very significant increase in high-end areas. And of course, high-end areas, 2 million plus, we may not have as many observations, and so that price category tend to fluctuate a little bit. And you can see that we are skewing more towards the high-end sales. The high-end sales seem to skew a little bit higher. Take a look at the share. For the below 500, last year we had 46% of all sales below 500, but now we only have 38%. So we're skewing a little bit more towards the high end. Take a look at the share for the 500 to a million and the million plus. They all increased compared to last year. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing some increase in price. Increase in price actually has been increasing for quite some time, for the last, I shouldn't say quite some time, but for the last few months or so. But this past month, it really jumped significantly by 14.5%. And that's the highest, that's the all-time high. Now, we looked at sales by categories, by price category, but we also should look at price growth by their price categories as well. Not so much by the range, but by more like the quantile. This represents the lowest 20th percentile of the sales, probably roughly between 0 to 350 or so. And then the top end is the 80th percentile. The last 20th percentile probably represents, if you want to put a figure to it, probably somewhere around like 1.5 million to, and above. And you can see price growth for the higher price range is higher, 26.5%, 26.7%. So we're seeing double-digit increase in price across the board. But we are seeing more price gain in a higher price segments. Couple reasons. One reason for the high price, of course, is as I mentioned earlier, the service sectors got hit a little bit harder. And in the service sectors and the retail sectors, the household income tend to be a little bit lower. So, for that sectors, for desire or the demand to buy a home may be a little bit tougher right now because of the economic conditions. The higher price, the other job categories, which tend to have higher household income, is doing a little bit better because they're not as affected by the economic downturn, or affected by the coronavirus pandemic situation as much. And so that's why we're seeing a little bit more sales at the higher price range. And also it depends on the areas as well. Some areas like the Bay Areas has tighter supply. So of course it's going to push up home prices a little bit more. I'm going to skip this one. Of course, the other part of the reason why we're seeing very motivated home buyers is because of interest rates. Interest rates at very, very low rates, 3%, below 3% right now. But because of increase in price lately, for the last year or so, year and a half or so, we have been, because of low interest rates, despite an increase in price, we have been seeing mortgage payment below last year's level, the previous year's level. But because of increase in price, this latest month, a significant increase in price actually pushed median price or median mortgage payment even above last year's level, despite the fact that we actually set a record low interest rate. So this, when I did some calculations, when we look at, when mortgage payment actually started rising, that's when we started, a couple months later or 3 months later, we started seeing, some slowdown in sales. So this is something to keep an eye on. When mortgage payments started rising, we started seeing, from last year, we started seeing a little bit of a slowdown in sales. And it's not a surprise as such if you look at pending sales. Pending sales at the state level surged quite significantly on a month-to-month basis. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, it started actually slowing down. In fact, it's actually experienced the first decline in 4 months for the month on a month-to-month basis. Now, on a year-over-year basis, we're still strong. We're still very strong compared to last year. As Dr. Yun said, we did have, the housing market stretched out a little bit. The home buying season stretched out a little bit. As such, pending sales actually still show, and in August, up 28, 29%. But I can tell you that it's slowing down a little bit, and we probably won't see as strong sales increase as before, but we still probably will see an increase. And part of the reason why sales are being constrained is because of tight supply. Again, 2.1 months only as compared to 3.2 months, and with active listings dropping quite significantly. For the last couple months or so, we have been dropping 40, 50%, on a year-over-year basis. That will restrain sales, but also will lead to increase in price. Now, I want to just switch gear a little bit and take a look at county level statistics. Here are the few counties in Southern California: LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura. You can see they're following a similar trend. And one thing I want to point out is, take a look at all these counties on a year-over-year basis. Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, Ventura, they're all increasing quite solidly, especially for Orange County, San Bernardino, and San Diego with double digit. But take a look at LA. LA seems to be actually continue to be weak at 5.2. Now, it's an improvement compared to a couple months ago, but it's still at a lackluster level. Now, we look at pending sales and some of the contingent sales, it seems like it will continue to improve, but LA is falling behind a little bit compared to some of the other areas, maybe because of people concerned about staying in LA because of the coronavirus pandemic, but it could be other reasons as well. LA is a huge county, so I do expect LA to continue to improve. So this suggests that, yes, some of the other counties in most of the counties in Southern California continue to be improved on a year-over-year basis. And because of that reason, for the first 8 months of the year, even though we are still seeing decline. Now, remember, we got hit really big at the beginning of the year. So some of these counties continue to show significant decline. Look at Ventura County, even for Orange County, it's still close to double digit, but they're improving. Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego, they're actually still decline, but only by a moderate rate. But LA County also, of course, is struggling a little bit. I do expect things to improve and to get better. Now, if you look at, so we looked at the year-over-year percent change and the year-to-date change, but also we should take a look at the month-to-month, because this shows you that the market actually is slowing down a little bit as the season is closing in on the tail end. There are some counties, Orange County, as I said earlier, are still doing pretty well. Ventura are still doing pretty well compared to the previous month, but some counties are slowing down. LA County still dropped by 4%, but I do believe that we will see some improvement continue in the upcoming months. And if you take a look at pending, this is still encouraging. We're still seeing double-digit increase on for every single county, which suggests that in September it will be actually an improvement compared to last year. So we'll continue to see some increase. But tight supply continued to be an issue. If you look at the active listings, these are active listings showing this year's compared to last year's. LA, Orange, Riverside, every single county is dropping by more than 50%. Some counties, Riverside, San Bernardino, the more affordable counties, dropping by the highest. Ventura also dropped a little bit by 65% also. So this tight situation is, partly because, the ongoing supply issues, not having enough housing being built and things like that, but also, the pandemic situation may have prevented some sellers from putting their house on the market because they're concerned about people visiting their house. There are a lot of different reasons. So things are slowing down right now in terms of active listings. They're still tight right now for active listings. Hopefully things will improve as we move along and as people realize that things are going to get better. And of course, we have been, as realtors, been adjusting the environment very well. We adopted, more people adopted virtual tours and things like that. So hopefully, the technology will help us, get better with acquiring listings and showing properties. Now let's take a look at median price also. I said statewide, we hit a new record high, right? But for individual county, we also hit record highs. Take a look at these numbers compared to last year. For every single county, actually, except for San Bernardino, which hit a record high last month. Well, actually, I take that back. The record high was actually back in 2007, 2008 for San Bernardino County, just by a few $100. But all other counties, they hit record high and continued to show pretty significant increase. Actually, all counties show double-digit increase except for LA County, which still increased by 7 or 8%. So pretty impressive. Part of it, again, is because of tight supply. Part of it is because of the shift of mix of sales change. Now, what's the outlook then? You saw, that we have some pretty robust increase in price. Sales are still down compared to last year. What's going to happen for the rest of the year? For the state, you can take a look. We still expect some increase next month in September, probably in October, right around here. But we will see a little bit of decline in November and December for sales. When we look at the whole year, the year as a whole, we're still going to see a decline compared to last year. It's still going to be about 3 or 4% decline, but it's much smaller than before. What about price? Price look pretty optimistic, pretty positive. If you look at home prices, we expect 7 or 8% for the rest of the year to increase because of low rates, because of tight supply. So it's safe to say for the year, for 2020, we probably will end with, for the state, we'll probably end with a 7 or 8% increase compared to last year, compared to 2019. Now, 2021, we're still working, we're still finalizing those numbers. So I don't have the numbers to share with you right now, but in 2 weeks, I hope everyone is going to our Reimagine, our expo. So in 2 weeks, you probably will see those numbers presented by our chief economist and our deputy chief economist. So to wrap it up really quick, here are some key highlights. The economy is bouncing back. but it's going to take some time. You saw, what I showed and what Dr. Yun showed. We have a slow recovery. It's going to take a little bit of time. Even in 2021, we will not be able to get back to where we were at the beginning of this year, but it will continue to improve. Now, of course, the wild card and the factors, the variables that we don't have certainty with is the coronavirus pandemic. It is going to continue to create some uncertainties. It depends on when we're going to have a vaccine. It depends on whether we're going to have a second wave. I mentioned this before. But as far as the housing market is concerned, we'll continue to see some increase in sales throughout the year, but it's going to be it's still going to be down for the year compared to last year as a whole. Tight supply will remain a constraint, but home prices, because of the constraint, will probably be elevated and remain high at 6 or 7% higher, depending on, that's a state number. Of course, some areas could be increasing a little bit faster. Some areas might not be increasing as much. So with that said, I promise you that I'll give you my email address at the very end. It is right here, oscarw@car.org. And also it will be posted on the CAR website. With that said, I am going to turn it back to Alex. And if there's any question, let me stop sharing the screen. One more thing before I turn it back to Alex. I think someone mentioned about commercial real estate earlier. We did a commercial real estate earlier. It's posted on our website. It's about a month ago that we did the presentation. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out or simply send me an email.
Well, okay. Thank you, Oscar, for your presentation. We will now open it up for questions. From Shun Zhang, she asked, how do you think rent control will affect the future of California real estate?
Well, it really depends. Of course, we're already seeing, based on the statistics that we gathered from our surveys, we know that if there are a couple issues, evictions, uncertainty about evictions, moratorium, rent control, will have an effect on people's desire to buy a rental property. That's what we have been saying before. When we have control, individual city controlling rent controls, it affects people's desire. So we already saw the number of investors actually buying rental properties drop to one of the lowest levels that we have seen in years. So that could have an effect on people's the demand on the investor side. Now the investors usually makes up about 10, 11% or 12% of total sales. So with investor sales going down a little bit because of the environment that we are at right now, because of the tight supply environment that we are in right now, it probably will not affect sales by a whole lot because we still have very tight supply. But you may actually see with rent control, if we have any rent control concerns in the future, it will affect builders and building housing. They may switch to a different type of housing instead of what they might be building now.
Okay. From Elizabeth Otok, when do you expect the government will stop attack on landlords?
Well, the eviction and moratorium, and you probably already know, and forgive me if I'm actually not giving you the direct answer because I don't have all the knowledge that an attorney has in terms of eviction and moratorium. But as far as I know, some of those moratorium and evictions will probably stay until the end of the year. So, and that's the reason why I mentioned earlier that people are still very, very uncertain about what's going to happen with those people who are who are behind on their rent, whether landlords are going to get their money back. That's why people are holding back on buying right now. As far as when we might have a lift of the moratorium, that's actually more likely going to be early next year, depending on the economic situation and also depend on the coronavirus pandemic situation. So my speculation is we probably won't see the moratorium will still be in place until early next year, when things actually start getting a little bit better economically.
Thank you. From Denise Green, why did Boston take a big hit?
That I'm not 100% sure. You know, you're probably referring to what I saw earlier and what I showed earlier for the small business owners or small business revenues. Those are some numbers that I actually grabbed, for as comparison purposes. I didn't actually go into specific detail on why Boston actually got hit hard. So I apologize for not diving into a little bit more on the Boston side, but I can take a look at it and get back to you later.
Okay, thank you. From Jose Castaneda, do you have this presentation and data broken down, reflecting a view on the Hispanic market?
Right now we don't. Now we do have for the specifics that I show. They do not break it out by. I do not have the breakout by ethnic group. So even for the statistics that we presented that we collected and presented, we don't have it by ethnic group. Usually at MLS level we don't. But what we do and will probably share is our annual housing market survey data. We just finished collecting our annual housing market survey data. And the survey results, we actually collect information by ethnicity, and we will be sharing a lot of those. We expect to actually show some sales or home ownership numbers by ethnicity, and also by employment number by ethnicity, using some of those statistics that we collect from annual housing market survey as well as from the Census Bureau. So if you're interested, I may not have all the data broken out by ethnicity, but some data I could take a look at. So if you're interested, again, send me an email. I know someone asked me about my email address. Again, let me give it to you. It's oscarw@car.org. So it's oscarw@car.org.
Okay, thank you, Oscar.
Sure.
From Jose, he asked, I keep hearing about a housing market crash. What is your take on this prediction?
Well, you saw our projections, you saw a forecast, you saw Lauren's forecast, our forecast. For the next couple of years, for 2020, we saw a decline, of 5 or 6%. At the beginning of the year, or 3 or 4 months ago, when you asked me whether we were going to see a significant decline in sales, I'll probably say yes, we probably see a double-digit decline, and we predicted that. But as things move along, we started realizing that things are actually a little bit better. So as far as sales are concerned, we're going to see a dip in sales this year, but an improvement next year. But as far as price, I think someone, when people refer to market crash, they're referring to, a significant drop in price. Because of the tight supply conditions that we're seeing right now, we do not think there is going to be a significant decline in price, if there is any. We predict that, this year is going to be an up or 8%. Next year probably will be a smaller percentage, but not a decline. And part of the reason is because of, with inventory at 2.1 months or so, there's still a lot of people who want to buy houses. But also, one want to compare it to what happened in 2007, 2008. When the market crashed, then we have significant decline in home prices. And that's because at that time, a lot of buyers were over leveraging. We saw a lot of people with 0% down payment in 2005, 2006. This time around, we have homeowners with equity at 20-25%. So even if we have some foreclosures, and we expect some foreclosures in 2021, that number will probably make up only about 5 or 6% of total sales, or maybe even 10%. But that is significantly below what we had last time. Last time we have 50-60% of all sales being foreclosed property and distressed sales, and lenders simply could not handle it, and so they have to actually dump it into the market. This time around, it's a little different. So we don't believe that it's going to be a market crash. there might be some slowdown in price, but not a market crash.
Thank you. From Amala and for leasing, how are the sales for rental unit like house and duplex?
How the sales? Well, as I mentioned, based on the survey statistics, and those survey statistics are just 3 months of statistics. So we have to take a look and see. But as far as rental properties are concerned, we have seen the rental properties sales usually make up about, I think, 11% or 12% of, well, actually a little bit less than that, maybe about 8 or 9% of all sales. That has dropped down to maybe about 6 or 7. Not a significant drop right now, but the share definitely has gone down, and it has a lot to do with, I think, concern about what's going on with the market. Do we expect things to actually improve? I think for the rest of the year, because of the uncertainty about the moratorium situation, I think investors share at the rental property sales probably will continue to slow down a little bit, not a whole lot, but until we find out a little bit more. But I think you can expect the sales to be slower or smaller compared to last year, maybe by 5 to 10% compared to last year. I'm speculating that number because I don't have a solid number to share right now, but that's what our speculation is right now.
Thank you. From Jenny Leung, how is forbearance and eviction affect the outcome of next year? Well,
very good questions. I think forbearance is on a mortgage forbearance, and what I mentioned earlier was it affects how many foreclosed properties that we're going to have on market. Now typically when we put it off later and later, there will be more and more properties more and more foreclosed properties being put up on the market. But here's the thing: if the economy continues to improve, the forbearance through the rest of the year may actually turn out to be okay. Right now, we're expecting about between 5 to 10% of properties being foreclosed properties. And when we look at some of the numbers released by Mortgage Bankers Association, we know that people who applied for forbearance actually have been slowing down. But if it turns out to be between 5 to 8%, we will still continue to see some increase in price, maybe by about 3% next year. But if foreclosed sales turn out to be a much bigger problem, let's say the economy, for a couple of reasons, let's say we have a second wave of coronavirus, let's say we have the economy is not improving as fast as we anticipated, let's say those foreclosures turn out to be much higher. Instead of 5 to 10%, we have 20% or 30% of foreclosed properties, then it's going to affect home prices a little bit more. It also depends on how big of a discount, those foreclosed sales compared to a regular sale. If the discount is only about 10%, then the impact may not be as much. So it has a lot of different scenarios that we can take a look at, but as of now, our baseline is that it's going to still increase home prices by 3 or 4%, even though we expect a 5 to 10% foreclosed sales. But again, if things got a little messy, that number will dwindle.
Okay, thank you, Oscar. I know you're you got the crunch on time. Can you take a few more questions?
Of course. And if we couldn't answer all the questions, feel free to send those to me. I'll try to answer it via email. Okay,
we have about 4 to 5 more. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. The next one is from Jamie Amesquita. They say that the media depicts an exodus from California. Can you validate this? If so, do you see an impact on the market?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
She said that the media depicts an exodus from California. Can you validate this?
Okay, so we're seeing some out-migrations. There's no doubt about it, and we continue to see some out-migration even before the pandemic situation, even before the remote working situation. We have been seeing people leaving California, and when you look at our surveys, again, the annual housing market survey, when we ask sellers, whether they will buy a home and where would their home will be, well, next home will be. 50% actually said 50% of those who plan to buy a home are planning to buy a home outside of California, and many of those are retirees. Now, we do have people moving out of California because of housing affordability issues. And of course, some may not be moving out of California, but let's say for the Bay Area, they move to places a little bit more affordable like Sacramento and things like that. So with the remote working situations, a lot of people doing remote working, we'll probably see people moving out to more affordable areas. Whether it is California or not, that's questionable. It depends. Some may actually move to for the Bay Area, for example, they will go to Sacramento, or for people who are in LA or Orange County may opt to move to a little bit further away, because now they don't necessarily have to work in the office full time. So that could lead to a little bit more out migration. But at the same time, keep in mind, California is still a state with a lot of reasons to buy. And that's the reason why we have higher home prices. We have places where we can go to, there are not a lot of states where you can actually go to ski on one day and go to the beach and enjoy the sun at the same time, on the same day. So there are a lot of different reasons why California is still, one of the high state with people who want to buy here. We are going to see a little bit of a slowdown because of remote working situations, but we will have to see how that goes. If we continue to build more, if we have more housing available in the market, they'll be a little bit more affordable, making the market a little bit more affordable, and that actually could keep a lot of people, staying in California as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, about 3 more. We have a couple of people ask about the same question, and this is from Nanmin Bush. Any potential of foreclosure coming on the market?
Okay, it's similar to, I think the answer that I gave earlier. Yes, there will definitely be more foreclosures because, we had an economic downturn, so there will be some. The question is how much. As I mentioned, it is not going to be as much as what we saw last time in 2007, 2008, because a lot of people over leveraged last time. They had very low, they put in zero down payment or even very low down payment last time. So a lot of people ended up sending the keys back to the banks. This time around, yes, we're going to have an increase, maybe 5%, an increase of 3 or 4 or 5%, maybe even 10% increase in foreclosed sales, foreclosures, but that only amounts to maybe about 7 or 8% total of home sales. So that's not going to affect home prices significantly. And even for those foreclosed properties, I speculate that there will not be a significant drop in prices compared to last time. The reason is, keep in mind also, lenders, because of what happened last time, they do not want to be a property management company. They want to be a lender. So they will try to, with the market being so tight, they will try to get some of these properties being sold in the market. Even in an auction, it will be bid at a lower price than the market price possibly, but maybe not as much as what we saw last time. So yes, there will be more foreclosed properties. There will be an increase in those properties, but the number will not be as significant as what we saw last time around.
Okay. 2 more. We have from Shan Yang. What do you think commercial real estate will look like a year from now?
Now, that's a very general question because commercial real estate, has a lot of different types of property: office, retail, the industrial, as well as a multifamily. Now, multifamily probably will see a little bit of a slowdown, as I mentioned earlier, as for the people concerned about what's going on with the eviction moratorium. As far as retail is concerned, I think Lawrence might have addressed it earlier. We have a situation where people may not necessarily may not want to go out and do congregating for the next 6 months or so. That's going to affect a little bit of a retail sales. Some of the retail shops, as I mentioned in one of the slides, will probably be closed down because small businesses could not handle the revenue loss. Also for offices, if people start working from home, the number of office space needed will probably go down as well. But industrial, where people are using, where online retail companies are using warehouses to store their products, may actually increase as far as industrial space is concerned. And so, I kind of briefly covered everything, but take a look at the presentation that I mentioned, on the CR website. It's a presentation that I did about a month ago on commercial real estate. Download that presentation and you get a little bit more detailed information from the analysis. But if you can't find it, again, send me an email at oscarw@car.org. I will be gladly to send you that presentation.
Okay. I know we have a couple more questions, but the time is really crunching, so I'm just going to ask the last one. This is from Anonymous. She asked, do you have any statistic or comment about Northern California market, especially Silicon Valley or San Francisco Bay Area?
We do have, and I don't know when we're going to cut it out or release it, but we typically have a presentation or a slide deck created for each individual region, Northern California or Bay Area, Southern California, and Central Valley, being posted on our website. So probably in a week or so, we probably will release that. You can take a look at that PowerPoint presentation, but I can verbally tell you that, look like we are seeing, in terms of sales, we're seeing a little bit of uptick in sales in Northern California, Bay Area. In Silicon Valley, a lot of people though, so short-term wise or in the next couple months or so, we might see an uptick in sales. But, it's experiencing a similar issue as some of the other part of the area. That is, there might be people remote working. There are people actually already moving to other areas that are a little bit more affordable. So that might actually affect, sales in the area. As of now, because of the tight inventory situation with the Bay Area, it is still, we still see a lot of demand. We still see home prices in the area continue to stay at an elevated level, may not necessarily set a record price, but still elevated. So, for now, in the short term, it looks fine. And for 2021, I think Bay Area will still be okay. Again, in the long term, it really depends on how the remote working situation pans out. Take a look at, the PowerPoint that we'll be posting to get more detail. And if you have more specific questions regarding a specific county or so, again, feel free to send me an email.
Thank you. Thank you again, Oscar, for your time today and answering questions. Before we end the webinar, we want to announce the final 4 winners of the $50 Amazon gift cards. Please check the chat box for the winners' names. Congratulations to all the winners today. We will email you your gift card to you directly in the next few days. And with that, we want to thank you all for joining us, and special thanks to Dr. Yun and Oscar Wei for the presentation. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.